The gavel echoed through the courtroom like a final judgment on my fractured family. Little did I know that by suing my biological father for the inheritance he had stolen from my mother's estate, I was about to unravel a secret that would force me to confront not only his betrayal but my own hidden truths as a gay man in love with Frances. My name is Philip Reynolds, 28 years old, living in a small apartment in Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood. I worked as a graphic designer for a mid-sized advertising firm, spending my days creating visuals that told other people's stories while my own remained carefully hidden from most of the world. My mother, Linda, had passed away from breast cancer 2 years ago, leaving behind a will that was supposed to secure my future. The family home in the suburbs, her savings from years of teaching at the local community college, and a life insurance policy worth a significant sum, all meant for me. But my father, Robert, had other ideas. After their divorce when I was 15, he had stayed involved just enough to maintain control over her finances during her illness. Now, he claimed the assets as his own through a questionable power of attorney and forged documents that I knew my mother would never have signed in her right mind. I had spent months gathering evidence with my lawyer, poring over bank statements and emails that showed unauthorized transfers right after Mom's diagnosis. The decision to sue wasn't easy. It meant dragging the family name through the mud, facing the judgment of relatives who still sided with Dad because he was the man of the house. But I couldn't let it go. Mom had always been my advocate, the one who hugged me tight when I told her I was gay at 19, whispering that love is love no matter who it was with. Dad, on the other hand, had cut me off emotionally, barely acknowledging my existence at holidays and making it clear that my choice was a disappointment he could never accept. The first hearing was today, and as I sat there listening to the opening arguments, my heart pounded against my ribs. Robert sat across the room, his new wife by his side, avoiding my gaze with that same cold indifference he'd shown me for years. The judge listened patiently, then adjourned for the day, ordering both sides to produce more documentation. I stepped into the hallway, the weight of the documents in my briefcase feeling heavier than ever. My hands shook as I loosened my tie, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a swarm of angry bees. "Philip, you held your own in there." The voice belonged to Frances, my partner of 6 months, who had been sitting quietly in the gallery the entire time. He was 31, a history teacher at a local high school, with kind eyes that always seemed to see right through my defenses. We had met at a mutual friend's barbecue, and from the first conversation about old books and quiet nights in, something clicked. He wasn't out to his own conservative family yet, but with me he was patient, steady, the anchor I needed when everything else felt like it was sinking. He placed a gentle hand on my shoulder now, his touch warm and reassuring in the middle of the sterile corridor. I turned to him, forcing a small smile. "Thanks." Felt like I was on trial, not him. The way he looked at me, like I was the one stealing from the family. We walked toward the exit together, the Chicago wind whipping through the revolving doors as we stepped outside into the late afternoon sun. Frances suggested we grab coffee at the little cafe around the corner, the one with the outdoor tables where we could talk without worrying about being overheard. Over steaming lattes, I vented about the forged signatures and the lawyer's warnings that the case could drag on for months. Francis listened, nodding, his fingers brushing mine under the table in a small gesture of solidarity that meant everything. That evening, back at my apartment, the reality of what I'd started settled in. I stared at the box of Mom's personal effects that the court had ordered my father to release. It sat unopened on the kitchen table, a cardboard reminder of everything I'd lost. Francis stayed over, cooking a simple pasta dinner while I paced. "You don't have to do this alone," he said quietly as we ate. "Whatever comes next, I'm here." His words eased the knot in my chest, but as I drifted off to sleep beside him, I couldn't shake the feeling that this lawsuit was about to open doors I wasn't ready to walk through. The next morning, I decided to sort through the box before work. Among old photos and jewelry was a stack of yellowed envelopes tied with a faded ribbon. They were addressed to Mom from someone named Elena. Curious, I opened the first one, my eyes scanning the elegant handwriting. My dearest Linda, the nights we spent talking under the stars still live in my heart. My breath caught. This wasn't just friendship. These were love letters, dated from Mom's early 20s before she met Dad. I sat there frozen, the words blurring as the weight of what I was reading sank in. Mom had loved a woman, deeply, passionately, and no one in our family had ever breathed a word of it. The letters spilled across the kitchen table like forgotten confessions, each one pulling me deeper into a past I never knew existed. I read them all that morning before work, my coffee growing cold as Elena's words painted a picture of my mother as a young woman full of fire and tenderness. Meeting Elena at a women's book club in the city and falling hard for the first time. They had shared an apartment for 2 years, traveled to the lake house on weekends, and written these letters when Elena moved for a job in New York. The last one, dated just before Mom married Dad, said, "I will always carry you in my heart, but the world isn't ready for us yet." Mom had chosen the expected path, burying her truth to fit into the life everyone demanded. I sat there stunned, the discovery hitting me like a physical blow. My mother, the woman who had quietly supported me when Dad turned away, had walked the same road of hidden love. It explained so much. The way she never pushed me to date girls, the gentle understanding in her eyes when I came out. But why had she never told me? And what did this mean for the lawsuit? My hands trembled as I folded the letters back into their envelopes. Francis had left early for school, so I texted him, "Found something huge in Mom's box. Need to talk tonight." His reply came quick. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. Love you." At work, I barely focused on the client mock-ups, my mind replaying the words. During lunch, I called my lawyer to mention the letters as potential evidence of Mom's state of mind, but I held back the full details. This felt too personal, too raw. When I got home that evening, Francis was already there, setting the table with takeout Thai food. I pulled the stack from my bag and handed it to him without a word. He read in silence, his eyebrows rising, then looked up at me with those steady eyes. "Philip, this changes things. Your mom understood you better than anyone. She lived it." We talked for hours on the couch, the city lights flickering through the window. I confessed how the letters made me question everything. My anger at Dad, my fear of being like Mom and hiding forever. Francis held my hand, sharing his own struggles with his family's expectations. "This lawsuit isn't just about money anymore," he said softly. "It's about honoring her truth and yours." But as we lay in bed later, a small doubt crept in. What if Dad found out about these letters? What if he used them against me somehow? The misunderstanding started small. Francis suggested we pause the suit to process, but I snapped back that backing down now would betray Mom all over again. He didn't push, but the air between us felt heavier, a first crack in our solid foundation. The next day, the lawyer called with news. Dad's team wanted a settlement meeting. I agreed, but inside I was reeling. At the office downtown, Robert sat across the polished table, his lawyer sliding papers my way. "Drop this, Philip. The money isn't worth tearing the family apart." His voice was cold, but I saw a flicker in his eyes when I mentioned Mom's personal effects. I didn't bring up the letters yet, but the tension was palpable. Walking out, I felt empowered yet terrified. Francis met me outside, pulling me into a quick hug on the sidewalk. "You're doing the right thing," he whispered. But that night, alone with my thoughts, the internal conflict raged. Was I fighting for justice or just proving something to a father who would never accept the gay son he saw as a failure? The letters had awakened something in me, a need to live openly, like Mom never could. Francis sensed my distance and pulled me close, his quiet strength reminding me why I had fallen for him. Yet the question lingered. How much of my own truth was I willing to expose to win this battle? The weeks blurred into a cycle of depositions and sleepless nights, the lawsuit consuming every spare moment. I found myself rereading Elena's letters late at night, tracing the faded ink as if it could give me answers. Mom had sacrificed her happiness for a conventional life, and now I was risking my relationship with Francis to reclaim what was mine. He had been patient, canceling plans to sit with me through late strategy sessions with the lawyer, but I could feel the strain. One evening after a particularly grueling day where Dad's attorney grilled me on family dynamics, Francis and I argued for the first time. "Philip, this is eating you alive," he said, his voice tight as we stood in the kitchen. "Maybe we take a step back, protect what we have." I lashed out, accusing him of not understanding the pressure, the way Dad's homophobia had always made me feel less than. The misunderstanding hung between us like smoke. We both wanted the best for each other, but our fears pulled in opposite directions. He slept on the couch that night, leaving me staring at the ceiling, wondering if love between two men could survive this kind of storm. The next morning, I apologized over coffee, and Francis forgave me with that gentle smile that always melted my defenses. We decided to spend the weekend at the lake house Mom had left in the will, hoping the quiet would help. Driving up, with Francis's hand on my knee, I felt a spark of the peace we used to have. At the house, surrounded by memories, I opened more of Mom's boxes and found photos. Mom and Elena laughing on a beach, arms around each other in a way that screamed romance. The discovery deepened my resolve. "She hid it because she had to," I told Francis as we sat on the dock watching the sunset. "I won't." He nodded, pulling me into an embrace that spoke volumes. But back in the city, the pressure mounted. Relatives started calling, siding with Dad and hinting that my lifestyle was the real reason for the family rift. One uncle even said outright that Suing was selfish. The societal prejudice stung, but it also fueled me. During the next deposition, Dad's lawyer slipped in questions about my personal life, probing if I had a roommate or anyone influencing my decisions. I dodged, but the implication was clear. Francis waited outside, and when I emerged shaken, he didn't press for details. Instead, he suggested we keep our relationship even quieter for now. That night, the internal crisis peaked. I lay awake beside him, torn between the man I loved and the fight I couldn't abandon. Sacrifices were everywhere. Time with Francis, my mental health, the fragile peace with distant family. Yet each time I considered dropping the suit, Mom's words from the letters echoed. "Live true." Francis sensed my turmoil and whispered, "Whatever you choose, I'm with you." His support was the anchor, but the rising tension made me wonder how long our bond could hold under the weight. The courtroom drama escalated when Dad's team subpoenaed more personal records, and somehow my relationship with Francis came under scrutiny. During a heated deposition, Robert's lawyer asked point-blank if I was involved with anyone special, and when I hesitated, he produced a photo from a mutual friend's social media. Francis and me at a quiet dinner, hands linked under the table. The room went silent. Dad's face twisted in disgust, and he muttered something about that phase ruining the family. I felt exposed, raw, as if my gay truth was now evidence against me. Walking out, the betrayal cut deep, not just from Dad, but from the system that let prejudice seep into justice. Francis met me in the parking lot, his face pale when I told him. "They know now," I said, voice breaking, "and he's going to use it." That evening brought our biggest misunderstanding yet. Francis, protective as always, suggested we pause the lawsuit or settle quietly to shield our lives. "Philip, this fight is costing you, us, too much," he argued. I accused him of wanting me to hide like Mom did, of not standing by me when it mattered. Hurt flashed in his eyes, and he left for the night, saying he needed space. Alone, the internal conflict raged harder than ever. Was I pushing away the one person who truly saw me because of my fear? The next day at work, a colleague mentioned hearing rumors about the case, and the societal pressure mounted. I called Francis, apologizing through tears on the phone. He came over immediately, and we talked for hours about identity, about how Dad's homophobia had poisoned everything, including my trust. "I love you," he said simply, "but I won't watch you destroy yourself." His words landed like a lifeline. In court the following week, Dad took the stand and painted me as unstable, implying my choices made me unfit to manage the inheritance. The judge shut it down, but the damage was done. I felt humiliated, yet something shifted in me, a determination to fight not just for the money but for the right to live openly. Francis sat in the gallery now without hiding, his presence a quiet act of defiance. That night, we held each other, the romantic moment simple yet profound. No grand gestures, just two men choosing each other amid chaos. But the consequences loomed. Relatives cut contact and work felt tense. The climax was building, and I knew the next steps would demand sacrifices I hadn't anticipated. Confronting Dad privately became inevitable after the judge ordered mediation. We met at a neutral cafe near the courthouse, just the two of us. The air crackled with years of unsaid words. "Why fight me on this?" I asked, sliding a copy of one of Elena's letters across the table. His face paled as he read, then hardened. "Your mother made mistakes," he said flatly. "Elena was a distraction. I gave her a real life, a family." The revelation spilled out. Dad had known about the relationship from the start and used it as leverage during their marriage, threatening to expose it if she left. When I came out, he saw history repeating and tightened his grip on the inheritance to save me from the same path. His homophobia wasn't just ignorance, it was control born of his own insecurities. I sat there, stunned by the high sin Mom had made and the betrayal Dad justified as love. Walking away from that meeting, the emotional weight nearly crushed me. I called Francis from the car, voice shaking as I recounted everything. He listened without judgment, then drove over and held me while I processed. "She protected you the only way she knew how," he said softly. The understanding brought tears, but also clarity. I had to choose. Continue the suit knowing it might destroy what was left of family ties, or walk away and live with regret. Francis supported either path, but I saw the toll it took on him. Late nights grading papers while worrying about me, sacrificing his own peace. That weekend, we escaped to a quiet park, talking about our future without the lawsuit hanging over us. His hand in mine felt like a promise, strengthening our bond in ways words couldn't. Back in the city, I made the decision. We pushed forward with full evidence, including the letters as proof of Mom's clear intent. The judge reviewed them privately, and Dad's team scrambled. The confrontation had cost me sleep and relationships, but it awakened a new strength. Francis and I grew closer through the fire, our love no longer hidden in shadows. The consequences were real, lost invitations to family events, but the personal growth was undeniable. I was no longer the scared son hiding. I was a man honoring his mother's truth while building my own with the person I loved. The final hearing arrived on a crisp fall morning, sunlight streaming through the courtroom windows as the judge delivered the ruling. Dad's claims were dismissed, the inheritance restored to me with interest. Robert didn't look at me as he left, but in that moment I felt no triumph, only a quiet closure. The lawsuit had taken everything, time, family, peace, nearly my relationship, but it had given back more. Walking out with Francis by my side, hand openly in mine, I realized the real victory wasn't the money. It was the freedom to live my gay truth without shame, the same freedom Mom had glimpsed but never fully claimed. We drove to the lake house that afternoon, the letters tucked safely in a box now part of my history. Sitting on the dock, Francis turned to me. "You did it. For her. For us." His kiss was soft, full of the tenderness that had carried us through every misunderstanding and sacrifice. Over the following months, life settled into a new rhythm. I sold the family home, donating part of the proceeds to an LGBTQ youth center in Mom's name. Francis and I moved in together, building a life where love wasn't hidden. The journey had tested us, but it forged something unbreakable. Two men choosing each other every day amid a world that still judged. Family ties remained strained, but a few relatives reached out, curious about the truth I'd uncovered. I shared what I could, honoring Mom's memory without bitterness. Through it all, the internal conflicts had resolved into acceptance. I was no longer fighting ghosts. I was living fully. Francis proposed on a quiet evening walk, and I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was small, filled with friends who had become family, a celebration of the growth we'd earned. Looking back, every step, the shock of the discovery, the confrontations, the choices had led me here. The lawsuit wasn't just legal. It was the catalyst for my awakening. As I stand with Francis now, watching the city lights from our balcony, I know the journey was worth every tear and triumph. True or false? Confronting painful family secrets about love and identity is always the right choice, even if it risks everything.